Well, okay. You say so.
Hello everyone. I've had a lot of requests for a shading techniques video, so this is my father Jim Watson, and he's doing a little basic shading for a color tattoo. And he's been tattooing for 43 plus years, so I would say Jim is old school none the least, but his methods are definitely effective. Right there he's using a razor blade and fanning out a 6 flat needle. Reason being, the needle grouping is a lot less traumatizing to the skin and allows Jim to push out his blacks for a nice gray shade. Sometimes your needle grouping is going to be wider than the area of tattoo you're trying to fill. So the trick to that is to flip your machine to the side so you're using the side of the grouping, needle grouping. You can see him just tucking the tips of the needles right into that edge there. One thing to keep in mind, this is a lot more damaging to the skin. So he's also being very gentle, as you can see there. Jim is constantly using A&D ointment and stretching the skin for this tattoo. You can't tattoo skin that's not taut. So he uses both his right hand, his tattooing hand. He uses the palm of his hand to stretch while he's tattooing, and also his left hand, of course. I've noticed a lot of beginners stretch with only their thumb and their finger and like tattoo in between in that little window, but that's not very good. I really suggest using both hands and getting a really good stretch. Even asking the client to help stretch is really good. It can only make your tattoo better. Look real closely right here. Jim notices that one of his lines is a little light, so instead of changing to a liner needle, he's using a 6 flat and touching up one of his lines. A lot of beginning artists, when they think of shading, they think of gray ink, when really you don't use too much gray ink. You just use black ink and use a technique of shading called whip shading. That's where you set your needles in at the dark point and then whip those needles out, creating the effect from dark to light. Another good tip to learn is Jim's use of the paper towel. Not only is he wiping away the excess ink so he can see what he's doing, but he's also using that paper towel to grip and pull the skin so it's nice and taut for him. Sometimes the skin can get kind of greasy with the A&D ointment, but he can still pull that skin back using the paper towel. Now he's touching up another line there. That's pretty good for someone with 64-year-old eyes. This form of shading Jim's using is called whip shading. And he's turning the machine down so it's a gentle impact on the skin, and he's just pushing the ink out. He calls it pushing ink. And you really want to treat that tattoo machine like a paintbrush and just go with it. Just push the ink out there. You know, shading is a way to hide flaws or imperfections in the tattoo. And that's the beauty of shading, really. For me anyways, it's where I feel calm and comfortable, and it's my comfort zone, so I can't wait to get through the outline just so I can start shading, because I can, fix little problems that I might have by shading out lines or, imperfections that any tattoo is going to have. It's a given. It's going to happen. A lot of people are asking, what do you set your needles at, what depths? As far as needle in the tube, I like to rest my flats or my magnums right along the tube tip. So imagine rubbing your finger against the end. Your finger's not going to catch on the needles. It'll just be right in line with that shovel end or the flat edge of the tube tip. And as far as gap between spring and contact point, I'm really going to have to leave that one up to you, because I've seen a lot of artists use more of a lining setup with that shorter stroke, and I've seen a lot of artists like Jim, he uses more of a color setup with a larger, softer stroke. So that's really your personal preference. Now this is a good tip for beginners. You see how Jim is actually pulling that needle grouping away from the back of the tube tip, that flat part of the tube itself. I do not recommend that for a beginning artist. I would flip that machine around so that you're pulling those needles against the back of the tube tip. He's doing the opposite. I'm not saying what he's doing is wrong by any means. If you have good needle control, more power to you, go with it. But for beginning artists, flip that machine around so you're pushing those needles against the back of the tube tip. It'll only help control your needles from jumping around and make your shading smoother. So.
Can I have a little bit of
What?
Pelican?
Pelican black?
Yeah.
There's some right in that far cap.
So check this out. This is a good way to change pigments in your needle tips without changing to a brand new needle and tube. You can actually just press down the armature bar like you see him doing and pinch off the excess ink. Give yourself a little rinse in the cup and then maybe do it again. And then you should be good to go to switch pigments. Well everyone, I hope this video was helpful to you. If you could please leave some criticism, comments, or just shout out some love, I'd appreciate it, and mark those stars for me. Here's a sneak peek at the color version, which will be the next video, so stay tuned for that. Thanks a lot.